The glass doors of Grace and Trust slid open with a soft hiss, letting in a woman who looked like she'd rushed out of a grocery store rather than someone who controlled one of the largest financial institutions in the Midwest. Her hair was tied loosely. Simple cardigan. Jeans. No makeup except the remnants of yesterday's mascara. Nothing about her looked like Danielle Grayson, CEO. And that was exactly the point. She walked in quietly, clutching a small leather bag over her shoulder. For a moment, she stood still, letting her eyes roam over the lobby she'd once proudly inaugurated. Bright lights, polished floors, clean scent of fresh paper and industrial air freshener. It looked perfect. Almost too perfect. A few customers waited in line. An elderly couple shared a laugh near the seating area. A man in a rumpled suit scrolled through his phone. Normal. Peaceful. Danielle stepped forward, heart steady, though her mind churned with the reason she was here at all. Rumors. Whispers. Small complaints that never reached the surface. The kind people only reveal in private conversations. They treated me differently. They didn't believe me. They made me wait. She had ignored them at first. Her bank had policies, strict ones, about fairness and equal treatment, but policies were meaningless unless the people behind them followed them. She needed proof. She needed to see the truth with her own eyes. Today was that day. She walked to the counter with a relaxed smile. The young teller behind the glass, mid-20s, thin ponytail, pale complexion, didn't smile back, didn't greet her, didn't even look up properly. She just flicked her eyes at Danielle, then back to her screen, tapping at the keyboard with the bored rhythm of someone counting minutes until lunch break. Danielle cleared her throat softly. "Hi, I'd like to make a withdrawal." The teller didn't bother with politeness. She reached for a clipboard without a word and slid it across the counter as if she were handing over a parking ticket. Danielle didn't react. She simply picked up the form, filled in her details, and wrote the amount. $5,000, not a fortune. Not enough to raise alarms, just enough to test the waters. She placed the clipboard back. The teller finally looked at the paper, then at Danielle's ID. And something changed. Her expression stiffened. Her eyes narrowed a fraction. She lifted the ID again, squinting at it, as if expecting it to magically reveal a flaw. The air shifted, subtle, but unmistakable. Danielle felt it. There it is, the moment everything starts. The teller hesitated. Too long. Long enough for Danielle to know exactly what gears were turning in the woman's mind. Judgment, suspicion, assumptions. Any professionalism in her behavior evaporated. The teller's lips pressed into a thin line before she muttered, I'll be right back." She snatched the ID and hurried toward the manager's office. No explanation, no reassurance, nothing. Danielle watched her disappear behind the frosted glass door. She didn't move, didn't call after her, didn't show the irritation rising slowly in her chest. She wanted to see how far this would go. Minutes passed. Too many minutes. While she waited, she noticed things, details, patterns. A man in a wrinkled business suit stepped up to another teller. He received a warm greeting instantly. No hesitation, no scrutiny. A woman in a floral dress approached the adjacent counter. The teller laughed with her, chatting casually. No tension, no suspicion, no checking behind closed doors. Danielle exhaled slowly, her jaw tightening just a little. Then the door opened. The teller returned, but not alone. A man walked beside her, middle-aged, stocky-billed, balding. glasses perched on a nose that seemed permanently stuck in a judgmental frown. Todd Larson, branch manager. Danielle recognized him instantly. She had met him when the branch opened. Back then he had been overly polite, almost nervous as he shook her hand. Today, he didn't recognize her at all. Good. Todd approached with an overly measured smile, polite on the surface, but stiff, forced. "Afternoon, ma'am," he said. "I understand you're trying to make a withdrawal." Danielle nodded calmly. "That's right, 5,000. Todd didn't respond. Instead, he lifted her ID, holding it to the light like he was a detective examining a forgery. "Miss Grayson," he said slowly, "is this your first time banking with us?" Danielle felt a cold, sharp twist in her stomach. Not of fear, but of something far more dangerous. "So that's where we're going with this." Her voice stayed even. "I've banked here since the branch opened." Todd's eyes flicked to the teller. Then back to her. "And you're withdrawing $5,000. That's what I wrote," she said, tone steady. Todd folded his hands in front of him. His posture changed, no longer courteous, but guarded, controlled. The lobby grew quieter. People could feel tension without understanding it. "Miss Grayson," he continued, "what do you do for work?" Danielle stared at him. The audacity was almost laughable. "I'm in finance." Todd nodded slowly, still unconvinced. "What kind?" "Banking." Something broke in his expression just for a second. He stiffened but quickly forced himself back into composure. "Unfortunately," he said, placing the ID back on the counter, "we won't be able to process this withdrawal at this time." Danielle blinked once. "What? We're unable to verify the transaction." Her heartbeat didn't rise. Her voice didn't tremble. "Why not?" "Security reasons," Todd said smoothly. Security, the word people use when they don't want to say what they really mean. Danielle studied him, her eyes calm but sharp. "You have my ID. You have my account number. What exactly needs verifying?" Todd clasped his hands tighter. "It's just precaution. We need to confirm a few details. Individual. Like what?" He hesitated again before asking. "Can you tell me the last deposit amount into this account?" Danielle actually laughed. Not loudly, not mockingly, just a soft, disbelieving breath. "That's not a standard question." Todd's polite mask faltered again. She asked quietly, "What's the real issue here, Todd?" He didn't answer. He didn't need to. She already knew. And she wasn't leaving. And she wasn't leaving. Not without the truth. Not without exposing exactly what this branch had been hiding behind polite smiles and empty scripts. And Todd had no idea. He was only minutes away from the biggest mistake of his career. The lobby felt warmer now, as if the fluorescent lights above had suddenly shifted into interrogation lamps. Danielle stood perfectly still at the counter, while Todd Larson fidgeted with her ID like it was an explosive device instead of a simple plastic card. People around them pretended not to look, but their eyes kept darting over, curiosity wrapped in discomfort. The elderly couple whispered. The young man in the rumpled suit glanced openly before looking away. Danielle didn't blame them. A simple withdrawal had somehow turned into a spectacle, and Todd seemed intent on escalating it. He cleared his throat. "I'm going to need to make some internal calls," he announced stiffly. Danielle stared at him, her voice calm in a way that made Todd visibly uneasy. "Go ahead." He hadn't expected her confidence. He blinked, then nodded, motioning the teller to follow him. They hurried into the back office with her ID held almost like evidence. Danielle stepped aside, moving toward the lobby chairs. She sat, legs crossed, back straight, posture relaxed, though beneath the surface, her mind sharpened. 3 clients treated normally. Me? Suspicion before I even finished my sentence. No request for a second form of ID. No security questions. Just immediate distrust. She watched the glass office where Todd now paced around his desk. The blinds weren't fully closed, and through the gaps she could see him on the phone, gesturing tensely. The teller sat stiffly in a chair, avoiding his eyes, her guilt readable even from across the room. A knot twisted tighter in Danielle's stomach. Not out of fear, no, out of disappointment, out of anger, out of a sense of betrayal from a place that was supposed to treat everyone with dignity. She'd built her career fighting for fairness. She'd sat in boardrooms, demanding unbiased hiring practices, transparent loan approvals, equal opportunity policies. She pushed for training, monitoring, accountability. Yet here, in her own institution, she'd walked in dressed like any ordinary customer and immediately became a target of suspicion. The irony burned like acid in her throat. This is why you're here, she reminded herself. This is what you came to uncover. After 10 long minutes, Todd emerged from his office. His shoulders looked tighter, his jaw locked. Danielle saw him take a deep breath before approaching her, as if preparing himself for confrontation. "Miss Grayson," he began, voice low, "I'm going to need you to come with me to the office." She lifted one eyebrow. "For what?" "To verify your identity." Danielle stood slowly. She didn't shout. She didn't argue. She didn't demand explanations. She wanted to hear the full script he'd rehearsed. "All right," she said calmly. "Lead the way." Todd nodded curtly and walked toward the glass office. Danielle followed, noticing how the teller avoided looking at her as she slipped out of the way. Inside, the blinds rattled slightly as Todd shut the door behind them. He adjusted his glasses and gestured toward the chair across from his desk. Danielle remained standing. Todd forced a tight smile. "It's standard procedure for transactions above a certain threshold." Danielle's voice was softer than a whisper, yet sharp enough to cut. "What threshold is that?" Todd hesitated. 5,000. "Interesting," she said. "And the last customer who withdrew $7,500, did you bring him back here?" Todd froze. Danielle hadn't missed a detail earlier when she'd sat in the lobby. A man, casually dressed, had left with an envelope thick enough to sag. No questions asked, no ID verification, no manager involvement. Todd swallowed. I wasn't aware of that transaction." "You were standing 10 feet away," she said gently, almost kindly. That kindness made him flinch. "You looked directly at him." Todd straightened, abruptly, defensive. "Miss Grayson, we're just doing our job." "Are you?" Danielle asked. Todd shifted again, clearing his throat. "Let's just confirm the situation. Our system flagged your withdrawal as unusual, so we're double-checking." "My account," she interrupted softly, "has over $1 million in it." Todd's eyes flickered. He didn't try to hide the shock this time. Danielle continued, each word slow and precise. "And I know for a fact your system didn't flag anything." Todd's face turned red. "Who told you that?" "I know how this bank works," she said simply. Todd's expression twisted, frustration mixed with confusion, and the faintest flicker of fear. He sat down slowly, trying to regain even a shred of control. "Miss Grayson, we have protocols. With all due respect, you came in without an appointment, without professional attire, and requested a large sum. We just need to be careful." Danielle smiled, soft, cold, patient. "There it is." Todd blinked. "There what is?" "The truth." She took a step forward. "You didn't question my withdrawal because of the amount. You questioned it because of me." Todd opened his mouth, probably to deny everything. But Danielle lifted her hand lightly, stopping him. "You looked at me," she said, "and decided something you had no right to decide." Todd's face paled. "You saw a woman who didn't fit your idea of a high-value client. You saw someone you assumed didn't belong here. And instead of serving me with the same respect you give others, you treated me like a threat." "Miss Grayson, that's not, I didn't." Danielle leaned slightly on the edge of his desk, not intimidating, just present. "I walked in as myself today. No entourage, no press, no designer suit, no corporate badge. And look how fast your tone changed." Todd swallowed hard. The teller outside twisted her fingers anxiously as she watched through the blinds. Danielle stepped back, letting Todd sit with the weight of his choices. Then she asked quietly, "Would you like to know who you're speaking to?" Todd blinked rapidly. Danielle reached into her small leather bag. Todd tensed. She slowly pulled out her CEO identification card, sleek, dark blue, embossed with gold lettering, and placed it gently on his desk. Todd stared at it, stared at her, stared back at the ID, his lips parted in shock, eyes widened, color drained from his face. He looked like a man watching the ground open beneath him. Danielle didn't smile. She didn't gloat. Her voice stayed perfectly calm. "Now," she said, softly, "let's talk about how you treat people in this branch." Todd's world collapsed in silence. For several long seconds, Todd Larson didn't move. His eyes flicked between the ID badge on the table and the woman standing before him, calm, steady, and impossibly composed. The CEO. The highest-ranking official in the entire institution. The woman whose policies, ethics, and standards he had supposedly sworn to uphold. And he had just profiled her. The realization hit him so hard, he physically swayed. Danielle watched him. Her expression unreadable. Not angry, not triumphant. More like someone who'd seen this moment coming all along. Finally, Todd managed to speak, voice quivering. I didn't realize, Miss Grayson, Danielle gently interrupted, her tone soft but razor sharp. "Danielle, if you're going to apologize, at least use my name." Todd swallowed. "Danielle, I deeply apologize for the misunderstanding. I didn't mean..." "Stop." Her voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. Todd froze. Danielle folded her arms slowly, letting the silence stretch until the tension felt suffocating. "This," she said, gesturing subtly around the small office, "is not a misunderstanding. Misunderstandings happen by accident. What happened today, that was a decision." Todd's jaw trembled. "You decided that I didn't belong," she continued. "You decided that I wasn't a legitimate client. You decided that I couldn't possibly have the money I told you about." Todd shook his head quickly. No, that's not what It's exactly what you assumed," Danielle said, her tone still calm. "And if I had been anyone else, if I didn't happen to run this place, your assumptions could have ruined someone's entire day. Their trust, their dignity, their financial well-being." The teller outside was frozen in place, eyes wide, listening through the crack in the blinds. She wasn't the only one. A few clients in the lobby glanced nervously at the office, unable to see inside but sensing the tension. Todd lowered his eyes, voice barely above a whisper. "I'm ashamed." "You should be," Danielle said plainly. Todd flinched, not because the words were harsh, but because they were true. She walked around his office, hands clasped lightly behind her back, examining the framed certificates, the Employee of the Month plaque, the photos of him shaking hands with corporate representatives. So tell me, Mr. Larson. She turned to face him again. How long have you worked here? 15 years. 15 years. She nodded slowly. Long enough to know how clients should be treated. Long enough to know what professionalism looks like. Todd nodded numbly. Danielle leaned forward, eyes narrowing slightly. And yet, long enough to forget that your job is not to judge who someone is, only to serve them. Todd squeezed his hands together tightly. I understand. I truly do. I made a mistake, a serious one. Good, she said softly. Because now we're going to fix it. Todd's head snapped up. Fix it? Yes. She sat down in the chair across from him, crossing one leg over the other. Do you know why I came here today, without security, without my executive assistant? Without warning. Todd shook his head weakly. Because I wanted to see, she said, voice steady, how our branches treat customers when they think no one is watching. Todd's breath hitched. And today, she continued, you showed me exactly why so many clients, especially clients who don't fit your expectations, walk out of banks feeling belittled, questioned, and unwelcome. Todd's shoulders collapsed inward. I'm so sorry. I'm not here for an apology, Danielle replied. I'm here for accountability. Todd stiffened. Danielle rose from her seat and approached the door. She opened it, and every head in the lobby snapped away. Too late. They'd all been listening. Danielle stepped out into the open area, her presence commanding but not intimidating. Todd, she said without turning around, bring my card and follow me. Todd scrambled out of the office, clutching her ID as if it were evidence in a court case. The lobby fell silent. Danielle turned to the teller, the young woman who had shifted uncomfortably under Todd's authority, but hadn't spoken up. What's your name? Danielle asked. Sarah, the teller stammered. Sarah Bennett. Sarah, Danielle said gently. Did you feel that my request was suspicious? Sarah hesitated, looking at Todd for help. Todd stared at the floor. No, Sarah finally whispered. I didn't. Then why did you go along with his decision? Danielle asked softly. Tears welled in Sarah's eyes. He's the branch manager. I didn't want to get written up. Danielle nodded, slowly, understandingly. That's fair. Todd looked crushed by her honesty. Danielle turned to the entire staff, the receptionist, the loan advisor, the employees at the back desks, who were pretending to look busy, while clearly listening. If any of you ever feel pressured to discriminate, profile, or mistreat a client, for any reason, I want you to know this. Her voice deepened with quiet power. You answer to me, not fear. The employees looked stunned, some relieved, some guilty, some nervous. Danielle turned back to Todd. Mr. Larson, office. Now. Todd followed her back inside, legs trembling. Once the door closed, Danielle faced him with a calm, level expression. I'm not firing you today. Todd exhaled shakily, tears forming in his eyes. But, Danielle added firmly, you are going to mandatory retraining, and so is every single staff member in this branch, effective immediately. Todd nodded, relief flooding his face. She added, voice softening but not weakening. You will personally issue a formal apology, not just to me, but to every employee here, for leading by poor example. Todd nodded again. Yes, absolutely. Danielle leaned in, her tone gentler now. I don't want to destroy your career. I want to rebuild this branch so that nobody, ever again, goes through what I experienced today. Todd wiped his eyes. Danielle calmly collected her ID from his trembling hands. Your job is not to judge. Your job is to serve. Todd bowed his head. Danielle walked out of the office, not angry, not triumphant, just resolute. She approached the counter. Sarah stood there nervously. Danielle smiled softly. I still need to make that withdrawal. Sarah exhaled with relief. Yes, ma'am, right away. This time, no questions, no suspicion, no hesitation. Just respect. Danielle waited calmly as the transaction was processed. When Sarah handed her the envelope, she smiled warmly. Thank you, Sarah. Sarah blinked, stunned. Thank you. Danielle turned toward the exit. Every employee watched her with wide eyes, knowing something monumental had just shifted. She walked out of the bank with her head high, not because she was the CEO, but because she refused to let anyone decide her worth. And today, the branch learned exactly who they were dealing with. The automatic doors of the branch slid shut behind Danielle as she stepped out into the cool afternoon air. For a moment, she just stood there on the sidewalk, watching cars pass and people walk by with coffee cups and grocery bags, unaware that a quiet earthquake had just shaken the inside of that bank. She loosened her shoulders and exhaled slowly. This had been one branch, one manager, one incident she witnessed personally. But Danielle knew better than anyone. Where there is one crack, there are usually more. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out and saw a notification from her assistant. Board meeting tomorrow. Discrimination reports overview. You still want it on the agenda. Her thumb hovered over the screen for a second. Then she typed back 2 words. Move it up. If there was rot anywhere in her institution, she wanted to tear it out by the roots. Personally. The next morning, the executive conference room on the 12th floor buzzed with conversation. Senior leaders in tailored suits sat around a long glass table, sipping coffee and casually scrolling through emails while waiting. But when the door opened and Danielle walked in, the energy shifted. She wasn't in casual clothes today. She wore a sharp dark blazer, crisp white blouse, and her CEO badge visible on a silver chain. Her expression was calm, but her eyes were all business. Everyone fell silent. Good morning, she said simply. A chorus of good morning followed. Danielle took her seat at the head of the table. I know we all have tight schedules, she began, so I'll get straight to the point. I visited the Westbrook branch yesterday. Unannounced. A few executives exchanged looks. Undercover, she added. Now she had everyone's full attention. I went in as an ordinary customer. No title, no suit. Simple withdrawal request. What happened next, she said. Her voice low but steady. Should never happen to any human being. Especially not in a bank that claims to value fairness. She let the silence breathe. I was profiled, questioned, delayed. Treated as suspicious for no legitimate reason. A murmur rippled around the table. The chief risk officer frowned. By whom? Branch manager, she replied. Todd Larson. Someone cursed under their breath. Another leaned back, stunned. Todd? He's been with us for years. Yes, Danielle said, and that longevity made him comfortable. Too comfortable. Comfortable enough to think he could follow his own private rules about what kind of customer looks trustworthy. The diversity and ethics director shifted forward in her chair. Her face was tight with concern. Did he know who you were? Not until I showed him, Danielle replied. And that's the problem. If I had been anyone else, I might have walked out feeling humiliated, doubted, and powerless. The room went quiet again. Danielle's gaze moved around the table, meeting each pair of eyes. We've had quiet complaints before, small signals. Customers who said things felt off. We responded with memos and training slides. But yesterday, I saw firsthand what those small signals actually feel like. She placed both hands on the table. So hear me clearly. This is no longer a memo-level issue. This is systemic, and it ends now. The operations director cleared his throat. What are you proposing? But not proposing, she corrected, implementing. She tapped the tablet in front of her. The large screen on the wall behind her lit up with a list. Branch-wide culture audit, mandatory on-site training with real scenarios, surprise field evaluations, anonymous staff reporting line, customer feedback follow-up team. We're not sending canned videos and hoping people suddenly grow a conscience, Danielle said. We're going to stand in our own buildings and look our own people in the eyes while we fix this. The chief financial officer raised a brow. This level of overhaul, it'll be expensive. We'll need to allocate. Danielle cut in gently but firmly. What's more expensive? Training or lawsuits, bad press, and the loss of trust in our communities? He fell silent. She continued, we cannot build profit on bruised dignity. Not in my name. The diversity director nodded, slowly, impressed. I'll start designing live workshops. Real ones, not checkbox sessions. Good, Danielle said. The HR director spoke next, cautiously. And what about Todd? Everyone turned to her, waiting. Danielle considered her words carefully. I've ordered retraining and a formal written reprimand. He will apologize to his team and will be closely monitored. If there is any repeat behavior, even once, he won't have a desk to come back to. Some executives looked surprised she hadn't just fired him already. That feels generous, one muttered. Generous isn't the point, Danielle replied. Change is. Firing him sends a message of fear. Correcting him sends a message of expectation. Another executive asked, do we go public with this? Not yet, she said calmly. We fix the inside before we make promises. She looked around the table one more time. Many of you have never been questioned in a place where your money should be enough to prove you belong. But some of our customers are judged before they ever say a word. That is not going to be our legacy. A quiet respect settled over the room. No one argued. No one rolled their eyes. No one brushed it aside. Danielle had drawn a line. And they knew better than to try crossing it. Later that week, Danielle returned to the Westbrook branch. No undercover clothes this time. No anonymity. This time, everyone was prepared. Todd stood near the entrance, suit pressed, expression braced, somewhere between guilt and determination. He stepped forward as soon as she walked in. Welcome back. She nodded. Good afternoon, Todd. The staff glanced nervously from behind the counters. Todd cleared his throat. The team is in the break room for the training session. We're ready when you are. Good, Danielle replied. Let's go. They walked to the back, where the break room had been rearranged with chairs in rows and a small projector. Sarah sat in the front row, next to the loan advisor and two newer tellers. A corporate trainer stood at the front, adjusting slides. But when Danielle entered, the trainer stepped aside. Because today, the training wasn't coming from a slideshow. It was coming from her. She took a spot at the front and waited until everyone's attention settled. I'm not here for a speech, she began. I'm here for a conversation. People looked at one another, quietly unsure. I came in last week looking like an ordinary customer, and I was treated as a problem, not a person, she said. You all saw it. Some of you stayed silent. Some of you felt uncomfortable. But the important question is, why did it happen in the first place? Silence. Then Sarah lifted her trembling hand. Yes, Sarah, Danielle asked gently. Sarah took a shaky breath. I followed Todd's lead because he's my manager. I felt something was wrong, but I was scared to speak. Danielle nodded. Thank you for your honesty. She turned to the rest. Fear cannot run this branch. Neither can bias. Only integrity can. If any of you ever feel like a decision is being made for the wrong reason, you have the right to question it. You have the responsibility to. Todd watched her, shame still heavy in his eyes. She continued. The way we look at a customer in the first 3 seconds, and either build a bridge or a wall. We will not be in the business of building walls. Head after head nodded. Todd slowly stood up from his seat. May I say something? He asked. Danielle gestured for him to step forward. Todd swallowed hard, hands at his sides. Last week, I failed. I didn't see a customer. I saw assumptions. I let my own bias speak louder than policy, louder than decency, louder than everything this company stands for. He looked around at his staff, eyes wet. You deserved better, he told them. Our customers deserve better. And Danielle, you deserved a leader who knew better. The room listened in absolute silence. I'm staying, Todd said, voice firm, not because I got away with it, but because I want to fix it. I want to be held accountable. I want all of you to hold me accountable. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't theatrical. It was simple, honest. Danielle saw something shift in the room, not just in Todd, but in everyone. A realization that culture wasn't a memo. It was a daily choice. She finally spoke again, softer now. This branch will not be remembered for one bad day, she said. It will be remembered for how we responded to it. The team sat a little taller, and for the first time, Danielle felt something she hadn't felt in that lobby a few days ago. The rest of the day at the Westbrook branch moved differently. Customers came and went, but the staff, every single one of them, carried an invisible weight, a new awareness, a sense that something long overdue had finally broken open. Danielle stayed longer than her schedule allowed, walking from station to station, observing interactions quietly. She didn't hover. She didn't intrude. She simply watched the way people behaved when they realized someone was finally holding the mirror up. And what she saw surprised her. Sarah, the teller who had been afraid to speak up, was now greeting customers more warmly than ever. Her voice had a spark of confidence, as if she finally understood her power. The loan advisor double-checked every interaction, careful to keep things fair. Even the newer staff stood a little straighter, sensing a shift in the branch's heartbeat. But Todd carried his shame with him everywhere he walked. Danielle noticed him standing in the corner, near the filing cabinets, just watching his team with an expression that looked a lot like regret. That look, the humility in it, was the only reason she hadn't fired him earlier. Not because he deserved forgiveness, but because he understood his mistake deeply enough to change. By late afternoon, Danielle stepped out of the branch for some air. She stood on the sidewalk, inhaling the cool breeze sweeping across the street. Cars rolled by. A pair of teenagers biked past, laughing loudly. A dog walker strolled behind them, tugged along by an overly energetic golden retriever. For the first time in 3 days, Danielle let herself relax. Her phone buzzed again. This time, it was her assistant calling. She answered with a calm, "Yes?" "Danielle," her assistant said breathlessly. "You need to look at your email, now." Danielle frowned. "Why? What happened?" "There's a message," the assistant said. from a woman named Mrs. Calloway. She says something serious happened to her husband at the Westbrook branch 2 weeks ago. And she attached proof. Danielle froze. Her heart didn't race. Her breathing didn't change. But inside, a cold understanding settled. One crack, and now the whole wall is showing. She walked to her car, got in, and opened her email. The subject line read, "Urgent. Discrimination complaint. Video attached." Danielle clicked it. A grainy clip filled her screen. It showed the bank lobby. A middle-aged black man standing politely at the counter. A teller staring at him coldly. Then Todd, stepping in, defensive, dismissive, towering over the customer. The man trying to explain. Todd cutting him off. The man stepping back, confused, embarrassed. Other customers staring. Whispers. Tension. The words. "We're denying the request. Please leave." No explanation. No apology. Just humiliation. The video ended with the man walking out, shoulders slumped, shame heavy in his steps. Danielle felt something inside her tighten, not anger. Something deeper. Sadness. Disgust. A responsibility that she suddenly realized was heavier than she'd imagined. Her assistant's voice came through the phone again. "Danielle, are you there?" "I'm here," Danielle whispered. "What should we do?" Danielle didn't answer right away. She lowered her head, staring at her hands. This wasn't about one incident. This wasn't about her undercover visit. This wasn't even about Todd anymore. This was about all the people who had walked into a place meant to protect their money, only to be made to feel like they didn't deserve to be there. Danielle finally responded, voice steady. "Set up a call with Mrs. Calloway immediately and forward this to legal." Right away. Danielle ended the call. Her reflection stared back at her from the darkened screen of her phone. Strong, determined, but tired. So tired. She closed her eyes for a moment, resting her forehead against the steering wheel. "You didn't cause this," she reminded herself. "But you're the only one who can fix it." After a few seconds, she stepped out of the car and walked back toward the branch. She found Todd in his office, staring blankly at his computer screen. "Close the door," she said. Todd obeyed instantly. Danielle took a deep breath. She wasn't here to destroy him, but she wasn't here to comfort him either. "I received a video," she said quietly. Todd stiffened. His throat bobbed. Video?" "Yes," Danielle said. "A recording of you and a customer 2 weeks ago." Her words hit him like a punch. Todd's legs gave out, and he dropped into his chair, face pale. Her words hit him like a punch. 2 p.m. When Todd contemplated, he raised an eyebrow. "That one," she repeated. "He wanted to withdraw money. Money that was his." I didn't mean to embarrass him. I thought he was lying." Danielle stared at him, expression unreadable. "You thought," she said slowly. "Or you assumed?" Todd didn't speak. "I'll tell you what I saw in that video," Danielle continued. "I saw a man treated like a criminal for daring to access his own account. I saw customers watching him like he was a threat. I saw your staff following your lead because you showed them this was acceptable behavior." Todd covered his face with both hands. "I'm so sorry," he whispered. "I swear I didn't realize what I was doing." "No," Danielle said softly. "You realized it. You just never thought you'd face consequences for it." Todd's shoulders shook. Danielle watched him for a long moment, then spoke with a voice that felt like steel wrapped in velvet. "I gave you a chance," she said. "I believed you could change. But this is bigger than you. Bigger than me." This is about every customer who walked out of this branch feeling less than human. Todd wiped his eyes hopelessly. Am I fired? Danielle didn't answer immediately. She walked to the window, staring at the street outside as people moved through their normal lives. Then she turned back to him. Not yet, she said. But you are suspended, effective immediately. Todd let out a broken breath. Part relief, part devastation. You will attend advanced training. You will write a formal apology to the customer and to your staff. If you ever repeat this behavior, even once, your career here will end that same day. Todd nodded, unable to speak. Danielle stepped toward the door, then paused. Take this time to understand what respect looks like, she said softly. If you come back better. She walked out. Todd stayed behind, crying quietly into his hands. As Danielle left the branch, the setting sun cast long shadows across the parking lot. She walked slowly to her car, the weight of the day pressing down on her. But beneath that weight, something else stirred. Resolve. Clarity. Purpose. She had exposed one branch. Now it was time to expose the entire system. Because if she didn't, no one else would. The sun had nearly disappeared behind the horizon by the time Danielle returned home. The evening sky washed in deep purples and gold. She dropped her keys on the entry table, kicked off her shoes, and let out a long breath she'd been holding since morning. But rest wasn't an option tonight. Her phone buzzed again. An email notification. Subject: Thank you. My husband never got justice. She tapped it open. The email was from Mrs. Calloway, the woman who sent the video earlier. The message was long, shaky, typed with the kind of emotion that spills out when someone finally finds a person willing to listen. My husband felt humiliated walking out of your branch. He tried to stay strong, but that experience broke something in him. Thank you for responding. No one else ever has. Danielle stared at the message for a long time. This was never about one man. It was about an entire silent chain of people who walked into banks expecting service and walked out with wounds no one could see. For years, people like Mrs. Calloway had whispered their pain, and no one of power listened. Tonight, Danielle felt that pain. All of it. She typed a reply, I'm listening now, and I won't stop. The next morning, she arrived at headquarters before sunrise. The building was still dark, the glass windows reflecting the pale dawn light. Inside, the halls were quiet, almost eerie. Danielle walked straight to her office, the one with floor-to-ceiling windows and a view of the entire financial district. She didn't turn on the main lights, just the lamp on her desk. She opened her laptop and pulled up internal discrimination reports, customer complaints, branch performance reviews, employee feedback surveys, things she had skimmed before, things she had trusted other executives to handle. Things she now needed to see with her own eyes. It didn't take long to find the pattern. Not just the Westbrook branch, not just Todd. Small incidents, subtle ones, scattered across multiple branches, barely noticeable unless someone looked closely. But Danielle was looking closely now. Her jaw tightened as she read complaint after complaint. Some vague, some specific, some heartbreaking, some infuriating. She whispered to herself, enough is enough. A soft knock sounded on her door. Her assistant peeked in. You're here early. Danielle gestured to the screen. Close the door. Her assistant stepped in nervously. "Is this about the Callaway video?" "It's about all of them," Danielle said. "Every single one." The assistant nodded slowly, sensing the gravity. "Clear my schedule for the week," Danielle said. "The entire week?" "Yes. And call the heads of compliance, ethics, training, and operations. I want emergency meetings starting in 2 hours." Her assistant scribbled notes. "Done." "And one more thing," Danielle added. "Draft a statement to the entire company. Something firm. Something honest. We're about to start a culture overhaul." Her assistant blinked. "A full, company-wide one?" "Yes." The assistant nodded again, then rushed out. Danielle closed her laptop and leaned back in her chair. This wasn't going to be easy. It wasn't going to be fast, but it was necessary. And she was ready. 2 hours later, a group of senior executives crowded into the main conference room, half tired, half confused, all curious. They expected a routine meeting. They were wrong. Danielle entered with a folder under her arm and a seriousness that immediately straightened every spine in the room. She took a seat, opened the folder, pulled out the printed complaints, then spoke. "We have a problem. No preamble, no soft landing, just truth." She slid a handful of papers across the table. "Read." Executives exchanged glances but obeyed. As they read, the atmosphere shifted. Some faces fell, some stiffened, some turned pale. The head of compliance swallowed hard. This is worse than I thought." Danielle nodded. "It's worse than any of us thought, because we didn't look." The head of operations tried to speak. "We've been meeting quotas. Customer satisfaction hasn't." "Customer satisfaction doesn't measure humiliation," Danielle snapped softly. "It doesn't measure bias. It doesn't measure the pain people feel when they're treated like suspects in a place meant to protect their money." The room fell silent. The head of ethics whispered, "Where do we even start?" Danielle tapped the table. "We start everywhere." She clicked a remote, and the screen behind her lit up with a slide titled, "Project Restore, Rebuilding Trust, Dignity, and Accountability." The executives leaned forward, listening. Danielle outlined the plan. Unannounced inspections of every branch. Secret shoppers hired to test fairness in service. Rewriting customer service protocols. Mandatory empathy training led by real clients telling real stories. Strict disciplinary actions for biased conduct. Anonymous reporting pipeline for employees. Direct customer feedback phone lines. PPP. Quarterly culture reviews. The head of training blinked in shock. "This is massive." "It needs to be," Danielle replied. "PPP." The CFO looked concerned. "The cost," Danielle cut him off. "What's the cost of losing public trust, losing customers, losing our reputation? This overhaul isn't optional, it's survival." PPP. The room went still. For the first time, they understood she wasn't just leading an initiative. She was leading a revolution. One no one expected, one no one else had the courage to ignite. PPP. After the meeting, Danielle walked through the lobby of headquarters. Employees passing by whispered to each other. They had no idea what was happening, but they could sense it. Something big was shifting. Something real. Danielle paused in front of a framed quote on the wall. Something she had chosen when she first became CEO. "Integrity is what you do when no one is watching." She stared at it for a long, thoughtful moment. Then whispered, "It's time to live up to that." Hours later, As evening approached again, Danielle sat in her office reviewing more reports. She was exhausted, mentally drained, emotionally heavy. But she felt a fire inside her that hadn't burned this fiercely in years. A knock on the door interrupted her thoughts. Sarah, the teller from Westbrook, stood cautiously in the doorway. Danielle blinked in surprise. Sarah? What are you doing here? Period. Sarah stepped in, wringing her hands. I wanted to thank you for what you did at our branch. You didn't have to care, but you did. Danielle softened. Period. People deserve fairness, Sarah. And you deserve to feel safe speaking up. Sarah swallowed. Todd, he's devastated. But he's trying. Really trying. Danielle nodded. Good. He needed to. Sarah took a shaky breath. I wanted to tell you something else. That customer Todd humiliated, he wasn't the only one. Period. Danielle's heart tightened. Period. There were others, Sarah whispered. But none of us ever felt brave enough to say anything. Period. Danielle stood up slowly. You're brave now. Period. Sarah managed a small smile. You made us brave. Period. Danielle placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. I didn't make you brave. I just gave you permission. Period. Sarah nodded. Maybe. But it changed everything. Then she stepped back, eyes glistening, and whispered, Thank you. Before Danielle could respond, Sarah left. Danielle stood there alone, staring at the doorway long after Sarah disappeared. Her voice was soft when she finally spoke. This is just the beginning. 2 weeks later, the Westbrook branch looked nothing like it had before. The atmosphere was different, lighter, warmer, more aware. Customers were being greeted with genuine smiles. Employees spoke with confidence, fairness, and professionalism. The tension that once clung to the walls like dust had been swept away. And at the center of all of it stood Danielle, watching quietly as the transformation she'd sparked began to take root. She didn't call attention to herself. She didn't need to. Her presence alone reminded everyone why things changed. Today was the final day of mandatory training. Not just at Westbrook, but at every branch across the region. The new culture was spreading, and Danielle wasn't done yet. Inside a small conference room, Todd Larson sat waiting. His face was calmer now, less defensive, more humbled. He wore no ego today, only sincerity. Danielle entered, closing the door behind her. Todd stood instantly. Danielle, sit, she said gently. He sat. She studied him for a long moment. You've completed all required training. Yes, he said. And I've started monthly one-on-one talks with my team. Real talks, not rushed meetings. I'm listening now. Really listening. Danielle nodded. And your formal apology letters. He reached into a folder and handed her a set of envelopes. Signed. One for my staff, one for the customer I humiliated, and one for headquarters. I also requested to meet Mr. Calloway in person, only if he's willing. Danielle looked through the envelopes. His handwriting wasn't perfect, but his effort was. Do you want to keep your job, Todd? She asked quietly. He swallowed. Yes, but not because I think I deserve it. I want to stay because I want to fix what I broke. Danielle looked at him deeply. Then she nodded once. You'll keep your position, on probation, but you'll keep it. Todd's eyes filled with tears. Thank you. I won't let you down again. You won't let your customers down, she corrected softly. That matters more. He nodded vigorously. Yes, absolutely. She stood, signaling the meeting was over. Todd rose with her, but before she could leave, he said, Danielle, thank you for not giving up on me. Danielle turned back. Her voice was gentle, but firm. I didn't do any of this for you. I did it for the people who walked in here expecting fairness and didn't get it. Make sure that never happens again. Todd bowed his head. It won't. She stepped out of the room, leaving behind a man who had been broken down, rebuilt and awakened. By midday, Danielle stood in the branch lobby one last time, observing. Sarah smiled brightly at a customer. The loan advisor patiently explained options to an elderly woman. Two younger tellers assisted a family with warmth and empathy. The branch was alive again. This was what banking was supposed to look like. Respect, dignity, care. Suddenly, the front doors opened. A middle-aged black man entered, walking slowly, hesitantly. Danielle recognized him instantly from the grainy video Mrs. Calloway had sent. Calloway. His eyes scanned the room cautiously, unsure whether he was welcome or unwelcome. Danielle approached him with a gentle smile. Mr. Calloway, she said softly, I'm Danielle. His shoulders tensed, then relaxed, as he recognized her from the phone call they'd shared the previous night. You came, he whispered. I had to, she said. You deserved better. He swallowed hard. It was just a withdrawal. But I felt like a criminal. I know, she said, and I'm sorry. Truly. He nodded slowly. Before Danielle could continue, Todd emerged from his office, almost freezing in place when he saw who was standing there. Mr. Calloway's expression tightened, waiting for hostility. But instead, Todd stepped forward, with tears already forming. Mr. Calloway, expressing confidence. Your variety of answers doesn't jive with confidence. Mr. Calloway also feels gratitude and emotion for something to do. Would this be a Fermi-Singh paradox? Because he is this, certainly. Some may be confused. Why did you come? Perhaps time is lost, in good faith. Calloway. I owe you the biggest apology of my career. Mr. Calloway blinked, taken aback. Todd took a breath. I judged you, unfairly, unprofessionally. I hurt your dignity. There's no excuse. Silence. Employees leaned quietly closer. Customers paused their conversations. Todd continued, voice trembling. I'm not the same man who mistreated you. I'm trying, every day, to be better. I know one apology can't undo what I did, but I want to start somewhere. For a moment, Mr. Calloway didn't respond. Then, slowly, he nodded. I accept your apology, not because it fixes everything, but because you're trying to change. A breath Danielle didn't know she was holding left her chest. Todd wiped his eyes, whispering a shaky, thank you, Mr. Calloway glanced around the branch, the atmosphere, the staff, the energy, and said quietly, it feels different in here. Danielle smiled. It is. Later, when she finally stepped outside, Danielle felt the weight she carried slowly lift. The sun was warm on her face, the breeze gentle, the world strangely peaceful. But she knew this wasn't the end. Not even close. Changing one branch was just a beginning. She had an entire institution to rebuild, one policy, one staff member, one honest conversation at a time. And she would do it. Not because she was the CEO, but because she was someone who refused to look away. She got in her car and drove off, knowing this was her mission now, a mission she wouldn't walk away from. As she merged onto the highway, Danielle whispered to herself, this is how change begins. And she was right. Change doesn't start with a crowd. It starts with one person standing up and refusing to sit down again. Her journey wasn't easy, but it was necessary. And she was ready. If you enjoyed this powerful story of courage, dignity, and justice, make sure you like the video, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss another emotional cinematic story like this. Your support helps us tell more stories that inspire, challenge, and remind us what real strength looks like. Thank you for watching. And remember, stand up for what's right, even when no one else will.